Okay, looks like I'm live again. Hopefully, people will find me again. The same exact thing happened to me last week. So, if you're seeing this, know this is a part two because yet again, I got cut off right in the middle of my questions. Please let me know, people coming in, if my sound is okay because the last time this happened, my sound was terrible. And if this happens again, I this is just beyond frustrating. I've heard of a lot other people having a lot of issues. But anyway, okay, thank you. Oh, good. I'm so glad because that was so frustrating last week. Anyway, if you're seeing this later, like in the replay, just know this is the part two since I got cut off. And if you want to hear the first part of where I was talking about the chocolate and the cheese, you'll need to go back and find that video. I'll do is later I'll set the thumbnail so they match, and then we'll say part one and part two. Very, very frustrating. Hopefully this doesn't happen again. It's funny, it didn't happen on Sunday, thankfully. But at any rate, but yeah, last time when I came back on, the sound was just totally messed up. And now I'm not even sure where I had left off. I think we were still talking about milk. I know I was talking about precious metals, but there was something else I thought I was talking about. Oh, vinegar. I was talking about vinegar. So I think I pretty much covered it, but I'll just yeah, no warning, just went off. Yeah, see, I get a warning. It says something about you're disconnected. We're going to try to reconnect you, and then it looks like I've reconnected, but then everybody's telling me I'm not. It's so bizarre. At any rate, it makes me wonder if maybe I should try this from a different browser next time too to see if that'll help. Because I use one browser for one channel and the other browser for the other channel, but maybe I should use my Google Chrome instead of the stupid other one. Um so yeah, so yes, you need sugar or you're not going to be able to get a good vinegar. And I think what I was trying to say when it cut me off is that um if you're afraid of sugar, you don't worry about it in vinegar because when it's done, there's no sugar left. That's the whole point. The bacteria and yeast feed on the sugar and then take that sugar and convert it into alcohol. Then that alcohol with the oxygen exposure gets converted into acetic acid. Now you have vinegar, no sugar. So nothing to be afraid of there as far as sugar goes. That's why you must use honey or organic cane sugar. So, and raw honey is going to be best. Okay. So anyway, what's it say? What's your favorite? Oh, Kizik shoes and why? I can't make up my mind. Well, I don't know that I'll be able to help you because I wear the kids ones and they have different, there's only one style in the kids I'll wear. I do have some other styles that are adult ones. They're too big for me, but because of what I use them for outside, like some outside boots, um, I'm not so worried about it. I wear thick socks or whatever. But they're mostly for garden and whatnot. But yeah, the I don't wear the really kid-looking kids ones. I just have the basic. In fact, I have my they look like this. They do make this style of shoe in adults. I forget what it's called, but they don't have it in the camel. So I have the camel ones and I have the black ones. I really like them because they're easy to slip on. And then I have some in the adult size ones. Like I said, they're too big because they only come as small as a 6, and the 6 is just too big. But I can still slip them on and go get stuff done outside. And they're kind of an ankle boot that they don't even have right now. They were only out for a short time. I don't know if they'll come out with them again, but they were leather and I wanted those because I knew they'd be more waterproof and all that. So they were great for stomping around in the snow for the most part, unless the snow got too deep and then would come over the top. Anyway, let me get to some more questions that I had written down here. So we talked about, Oh, somebody asked me if I grow moringa. I get this asked every so often. People try to encourage me to grow moringa. Well, I've tried. I've tried a few times. I've even tried growing dwarf moringa, and that one at least germinated and then died shortly after, even though I had it in the greenhouse and in the house. It does not like our area. It's just not meant to grow here. And the more I got to thinking about it, it's like, I don't know that I want a moringa tree because for one, it's a tree and it doesn't like our area and I don't want to grow it in the house. So at any rate, moringa's great. I do have some moringa powder stocked up. I hate the flavor of it, but I do keep some, but I'm not dependent on it. And here's why. Because when it comes to a lot of that stuff, I try not to be too dependent on some of that kind of stuff that I can't grow, especially if I don't like the flavor of it. Because I can grow all kinds of highly nutritious herbs that love it here, such as nettle. Nettle is so highly nutritious and it's very good for your thyroid and many other things. And so I'm happy with that. It might be a little bit more of a pain to try to handle it, but quite literally, but I don't have to work at it and it grows just fine for us. And that not just that, but pretty much greens from anything else. So leaves from a lot of your berries are edible and highly nutritious. Um, leaves from like things you may not think about eating. I mean, like the root, like a lot of your root vegetables, like a rutabaga, turnips, beets, carrots, the greens on all these things are edible. But a lot of people may not think to eat those. So dry them up and make a mixed greens powder, or even doesn't have to be powder. I usually flake mine, and then it gets added to almost pretty much every dinner I make. Sometimes I'll throw it in tea as long as I don't get too carried away with it. Oh, dandelion leaves is another big one I use a lot. Highly, highly nutritious. So I'm not worried about not being able to grow moringa. So I'm not trying that hard on it. Now, if it's something you feel like you really, really want to grow, like I came to be convinced more and more that I did really want to grow mullein. So I kept trying and kept trying until I found the seeds that were going to work. And that was something I got from someone locally. So the seeds had been acclimated. So now I have mullein and I'm thrilled. That did become important to me where moringa is not. Now, for places, so my point in even bringing this question up is I think it's important because sometimes people feel like, well, so and so is always going on about, the moringa that they grow and how great it is for everything. And so people feel it's kind of like the freeze dryer thing or the Excalibur thing, where people start to feel like they're not going to be truly healthy or have their food preserved properly if they don't have or even in All American Canner, if you don't have all the right equipment or all the right herbs, well, what if you can't grow them? What if you can't afford to buy those things? I mean, you got to find what no matter where we live around the world, it doesn't matter where you live, there are going to be medicinal herbs unless you're right in the middle of the desert where nothing grows. But I had a lady even tell me that where she lived in the Sierra Nevada, am I saying that right? Anyway, pretty much desert, mountainy area. She found there was a lot of stuff she couldn't grow because it needed water. But she found a lot of medicinal herbs that did grow naturally and like the drought-like conditions. So, hello, Diametra. Good to see you. So, it's about learning what herbs do grow naturally in your area. Learn about the things that grow wild around you. And that's why I talked about in some of my book related videos that look at why is it now it looks like all I have are mods. Look at getting your hands on a book that talks about medicinal herbs that you can find in your own region, in your own state. that's going to be a lot more helpful than worrying about whether or not you can grow moringa or you can grow ginger or you can grow nettle for that. Some people can't grow nettle. If they can't grow nettle, they can probably grow moringa. And so, because nettle tends to like wet climates. That's why there's nettle all over the UK. And that's why there's nettle. You can easily grow nettle here. I wouldn't say it's all over here, but you can grow it here. I've never actually found nettle growing wild around here, but I've got it growing because I started it from seed and didn't have a bit of problem with it. In fact, I'm going to have some work to do to kind of thin it back this year since I didn't do that last year. I'm gonna have to get on that because, well, I guess it's only mid-February, but I got about another 6 weeks. I'm gonna want to put my potatoes in. That's where I put my potatoes in. So I'm gonna start pulling that nettle back, get it back to where it belongs. So yeah, I just wanted to put that out there again. But and then wild chamomile. I mean, I've tried to grow chamomile. I got a couple of plants from a neighbor, and they did okay. I don't know if chamomile is an annual or a perennial. I thought it was a perennial and they didn't come back the next year, but I get pineapple weed. Pineapple weed is a form of chamomile. I don't know if pineapple weed is considered um wild chamomile. Tyler, for the second week in a row, YouTube cut me off in midstream, so I had to start a separate window or a separate stream right in the middle. Just bam, just cut me off, so I had to start a whole new one. So you did kind of miss the intro because it was on the other one. See, are there any nettle you can't use? I see lots of nettle in my city. Oh gosh, Lucy, I don't remember. I think I covered some of the more common ones in the video I did several years ago on nettle that you can find on my main channel. Uh, I don't remember, but there is the common nettle that people think, which is the stinging nettle, Urtica dioica. I think that's right. Urtica dioica, or yeah, I think that's what it's called in the Latin, the botanical name. So let's see here. Let me move on. Somebody else asked if they need to cook elderberries before tincturing. No, you do not. If you feel better about it, go ahead, but there's absolutely no need because you're not going to be eating the seeds. It's the seeds and the berries that need to be cooked or, not chewed. If you swallowed them whole, they'd most likely are not going to hurt you anyway. But you're tincturing your elderberries, so you're not even eating the berries. Unless you go back and eat them later. I don't know. I usually just feed them to my chickens, after I make like a syrup or something. But I usually don't feed the stuff that's been tinctured in strong alcohol to my chickens. I don't need drunk chickens walking around. I don't know. Maybe it'd make them lay more eggs. Who knows? So, but no, you don't need to cook your elderberries. You got dried elderberries that were dehydrated raw. Just tincture them as is. That's what I do. No problems. In fact, that's what's in here. Tincture that was made from raw but dehydrated elderberries. I mean, because you can dehydrate stuff and have it still stay raw. You just don't want to dehydrate it at a cooking temperature. Okay, let's see. I talked about the chocolate. Let's see. I'm gonna skip that one for now because I covered it on my this and that you'll see Monday. Oh, that was another one. Someone asked me that about flour. If does flour only last for 2 years? Oh, I guess it depends on how you're packaging it, but yeah, it's going to last a lot longer than 2 years if it's properly stored and you're keeping it free from moisture and from weevils. Now, if you're talking about whole grain flours, once the grains have been ground into a flour, the nutrient loss happens fairly quickly. So it's best if you're talking when it comes to whole grain flours that you grind them up and use it as fresh as possible. because you will have nutrient loss, but it doesn't mean it goes bad and you can't use it. You just won't get as much nutrients out of flour that is whole grain that's been sitting for a long period of time, even if it's very well stored. Our flour doesn't last that long. We use it up we use it up pretty quick. But, yeah, so as far as storage goes, it's not gonna just up and spoil after 2 years. That's just not gonna happen. And if it's a whole grain flour, you might not have a lot left in nutrients, but you're still gonna have your carbs. Like I'm always saying, you're still gonna have your carbs, you're still gonna have your minerals, and, it's still gonna be edible is the point. But like anything, it's always best to try to rotate through your stuff as much as possible. So, okay, moving on. Um, okay, I covered the copper wire. See, I'm reading these out of order. Did Tammy ever make it back in here? Oh, there she is. Okay, good. So I'm out of order, Tammy, all because of you. Okay, I covered the cheese one, but see, I'm out of order anyway because I decided to, so it's my fault too, because I decided to do the cheese and the chocolate one first. Let's see. Oh, a little tip that a few people gave on my video on the more 5 things to consider storing that you might not have thought about is storing your super glue in the freezer once you've opened it. I never heard that before. I learned something completely new. So apparently you can do that and it's going to prevent it from drying out. I was like, well, that's good to know. I wish I would have known that years ago. I had never heard that before. So thank you to all those people who threw that tip out there. Now I can't say from experience how well it works because I never knew that. So I've never tried it, but several people did say that. And I was like, well, how cool is that? Okay, any other questions I wanted to cover? That Okay, I covered the vacuum sealing and chocolate. I didn't actually have a ton of questions. So, let me look and see if anyone else has asked any questions since they've been in here. See, I've recently been enjoying hibiscus tea and wondering if it's possible to drink too much. You know what? That would be something you would have to look into for yourself. I have a tendency to kind of get myself hooked on certain, like ginger. I love ginger tea right now. Usually it's peppermint tea, but my latest thing has been ginger tea. It's all I want. I feel pretty safe with it. I think it's a matter of just listening to your body, really. I mean, if you start not feeling right, you might be getting too much. If you or see any other side effects that just aren't normal, and the only thing you can relate it to is the fact, the thing that you've done different is drinking a lot of hibiscus tea, then you might need to back off and just try a different tea for a while. Okay, I answered that one. Let's see if there's anything else. I don't see anything else. So let me go back down to the main. Patrick needs cookies. Well, he's gonna have to wait. I'm not making cookies today. Today's Wednesday's one of my 2 fast days in the week, and I tell you that going back to what I said on Sunday, it's really been helping me a lot. My guts are doing better. My skin is doing better. I think it's really helping me just to kind of get a hold of whatever was going on in my guts, and so I'm going to stick with it for as long as I can. So no cookies today because I'm going to want to eat the cookie dough and then a cookie, and I don't want to tempt myself. Maybe tomorrow or Friday, we'll see. So, do you ferment vegetables? Yes, I do. And in fact, Delia Daisy, I think I've interacted with you quite a bit. And here's something you'll need to know, Delia. I think if I'm saying your name right, I know you had asked me a while back, months ago. You asked me the same question on several different videos, and I replied to your questions. But I don't know that if you ever saw my replies. So make sure you're going back and checking if you're not getting notifications of my replies. Make sure you go back and check to see if I ever answered your questions. But yes, I ferment vegetables. I just don't ferment everything all the time because I don't like everything fermented. I love kimchi. And right now I'm working through, like I recently had made 3 quarts of kimchi and I love it. But even that, after a while, it's like, okay, I need a break from it after a while. I love fermented hard boiled eggs. And those are probably the two main things as far as a food thing goes that I like to ferment and consume. Other things I might ferment more of just another way to preserve them, like cut up onions or garlic. It does reduce the potency of those, which I don't prefer as much, but sometimes it is nice to have them in that form. But with garlic, like whole fresh garlic, I prefer to actually freeze it. It thaws really quickly and you can just chop it up and you're not losing the heat like you do with the fermented garlic or the stronger garlic flavor. Oh, 48 to 72-hour fasting is saving my life. That's good, Mary. Yeah, I do 2 days a week, but I spread it out, but each day, each time it ends up being closer to 2 days, just because I'll stop eating like at 3, 4 o'clock at the latest in the afternoon, and then go all the next day not eating anything, and then I try to hold out until noon the day after that, but usually maybe closer to 11. So a lot of times it's, about 44-hour fast, 42 at the shortest, but it's been helping me a lot. With whatever was going on, I talked about it on my Sunday live. Whatever was going on in there that I've been dealing with for like 3 months. And I think, it feels like things have finally gotten under control. So I want to stick it out for a while just to make sure if there was certainly something in there I needed to just cleanse out of my system, that is gone. And I'm still taking the diatomaceous earth daily to also help with that. What were the source I learned about nettle tea at? It was all that worked for pain after my wrist surgery. Oh, that's interesting. You were the source. Sorry, Tyler. I got this all blown up bigger so I can read it better, and I'm still not reading it right. Oh, that's cool. That is really exciting. I don't even know what that other thing is, that tramadol. That must be some kind of um, a pharmaceutical pain killer, maybe. I've never heard of it. Nettle worked for that. That's great. Wow, that's good to know. I appreciate that. My computer's wanting to restart, so hopefully it doesn't. It's irritating me. So hopefully it doesn't decide to restart right in the middle of my show. It's like I've had enough issues with YouTube booting me off and making me start over. Okay, actually, I did have a couple more questions. How did I miss these? Somebody wanted to cover this again because there was a couple questions I covered in the last Wednesday and then got cut off and the sound was terrible. But someone was asking about my butter croissant roll recipe and if I have a recipe. Generally speaking, yes, because on my main channel I have a recipe for my basic bread recipe that I use for making cinnamon rolls. I use for making the butter crescent rolls. I use for making loaf bread, pizza dough, all of that. It's just I might change what I add to the dough according to how I'm using it. But like the crescent rolls, it's just a matter of like, after I got the dough all made and I'm getting ready for the second rise, I just roll it out and turn it, butter it and then roll them up into little crescents and butter it again. They just got a lot of butter. They're good that way. They're so nummy. They're kind of our favorites. Our favorite type of bread just to eat is that. And you don't even have to butter it. It's already all buttered up. So I'm still up and running. Good. Thank you, Patrick. Mr. Rain. Wednesdays he'll come in and join us again. In fact, I have an idea for a show the two of us should do together. So anyway, another question I had was this is going to be in regards to, I was kind of talking on Sunday, because I was talking about fasting, I was talking about scripture, and somehow yeast came up. the subject of yeast, and I was talking about how in the Bible, the reason you had like the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and the reason the bread was unleavened and you had to get your yeast out of the house for that time. So that would be like your sourdough starters, all that stuff. Any yeast laden bread was to leave the house for that week. And somebody asked me if fluffy bread or bread with yeast in it was sin. No, it's not. It's about the symbology of yeast representing sin. It doesn't mean that yeast is a sin and you can't have it, but it's all about the symbology of that, and Christ being sinless was the unleavened bread because he was sinless. He didn't have yeast in it. But, all through scripture, it also talks about how the woman who takes a little leaven and works it through the bread and well, of course, I think that was also talking about sin on that one, but yeah, I mean, eating leavened bread was totally normal, except for it was not, and those who still like keep Feast of Unleavened Bread just don't eat it during that 7-day period. Well, it's actually more, yeah, it's a 7-day period. You just don't have any bread with yeast in it. And some people think that carries over into like, using baking soda. Some say, or baking powder. Some say yes, some say no. I just say, I'll just not leaven any of the bread, just have flatbreads for the week. And so I came up with this excellent recipe for like basically a cracker bread that I absolutely adore. My grandkids adore it. So yes, Tammy, correct. It affects the whole lump. And so that's why the yeast was a representation of sin, because just that one little bitty sin can taint everything. And that's where that comes from. But it doesn't mean you can't ever eat yeast. I mean, no, it's not a sin. It is not a sin to eat bread, to eat sourdough, or eat any other kind of yeast bread. It's not a sin. Just wanted to clear that up because it seemed like there was a little confusion on that. So I don't know if the "Do you grow ginger" thing was directed at me. I do not. I've tried several times. I actually got a plant growing and I was thinking, okay, I should be able to move it outside. I actually got about that tall and it was starting to get new little shoots coming out. And when the weather started warming up, I moved it outside on the front deck so it'd still stay warm but get as much sun as it could because it's on the south facing side of the house. Right after I did that, a freeze came, and a late freeze, and killed it. I was bummed, and I just for now I'm just going to keep stocking up on it, and if it ever gets to where I can't get it anymore, I'm just going to have to live without it. Just like I was talking about with the moringa. But see, the difference is I like the taste of ginger. So that's why it's more important for me to stock up on ginger because I use it a lot. But yeah, um, I also think it's just a little too cool here year round. I might try again at some point with, next time I get organic ginger from um, Azure Standard. And I might stick a root in a pot and try it again because I did actually get it to grow inside. It was just putting it outside because I don't want to have to try to grow everything inside because we just don't get a lot of light throughout the whole year. Even in the south facing window, you have to have sun to get light coming in there. So, but I do have that coffee plant, and over in this corner here, I got a grapefruit tree. I don't expect to get any fruit out of it here because it's citrus, but it does make a pretty plant. Your citrus plants make very pretty plants. So, okay, was that it? I think that really was it. Now, as long as YouTube does not boot me off again, I have another topic. So that was the Q&A. If I get any other questions in here, I'll either answer them in the next Q&A, hoping we don't get cut off again in that next week, or I'll try to get to them later. I wanted to talk about something a little bit interesting. I was going to do it last week and didn't get a chance to. But so we had, if you remember, a couple of Sundays ago, we had a power outage. And I decided I like the lighting so much for that I decided I'm not going to turn on the overhead lights anymore because I like it better this way. Um, well, it's kind of interesting to see how our community responds to power outages. Now, keep in mind, when I moved here in 1988, it was very, very commonplace for almost every home in this town to have a wood stove of some kind, whether it be an insert, a freestanding wood stove. It was common. It was very commonplace. It's not as common anymore as it used to be. And even homes that once used to have wood stoves, this is what I found out this year, people have removed them in place of something else. Maybe they didn't want the extra work. Maybe they didn't like the mess of the ashes and the bringing the wood in and little pieces of wood falling all over the place. Because it is kind of messy having a wood stove. However, that power outage was in tandem with the freezing weather. I think some people had their eyes opened yet again. Because here's the problem is you got I think a lot of the older people know better and aren't getting rid of their wood stoves. But a lot of the younger people that are buying homes or having homes built, for some reason, even ones that were born and raised here haven't figured it out. The importance of having a wood stove. Now, I did see one lady say that, yeah, we did take our wood stove out, but we also have, a generator and some, uh, space heaters. But I'm thinking, man, space heaters would pull a lot of energy. You'd be going through a lot of fuel with your generator, I would think. I mean, if Patrick's still on here, he could tell me. But I'm thinking that space heaters would, well, Tyler's here too, so I'm thinking it would suck quite a bit of juice that you would go through a lot more fuel a lot faster. So then to top it off, I mean, the roads were just terrible in a lot of places around here. Nobody wanted to leave their house. And so getting to the store to get groceries was a little harder for some people. And it's not like, I like to watch the community Facebook page when this kind of stuff happens because it helps me get an idea of how are people in our community thinking right now when these kind of things happen. And it's really sad to see how many, again, especially young people, I don't know what to do. It's so cold. I should have prepared more. People were actually saying that, while older people were saying, yep, you should always make sure you have this, that, and the other thing. And when I say younger people, I'm not talking about, people in their 20s. I'm talking about people in their 30s, 40s, in that age bracket. And I'm just like, I think you guys are old enough to know better. I mean, our boys know better they have generators at least, and Ryan has a wood stove. Justin has a wood stove, but it's out in the shop. But he does have another way that he can heat his home if he has to, but he needs to get a propane tank because he does have a propane stove in his home. It's built into the home, but he just needs to get a propane tank and have it set up out there and have it ready in the event, of power outages. But he does have a generator. So these, so my kids, they understand at least a little bit about the importance of having some kind of preparedness. Maybe not to the same degree as us. Well, not to the same degree as us. Just say that. But we've always had a wood stove. We've always done certain things and learned how to live without power from the time the kids were little, you know, well, from before we even had kids, because power outages are so commonplace here. And that's why I say that. That's why sometimes it just surprises me that people don't know better here, because power outages are extremely commonplace here, especially in the winter. Though we may not always get snow and ice, so or we only get it for a short period of time, maybe. A lot of times they may not coincide, the freezing weather and the power outage. but this year it most certainly did. And I think a lot of people were smacked upside the head with this one because people were cold, cold, cold. They had no way to heat their homes. And we had family that even just and stayed with us the night during that power outage so they wouldn't freeze to death because they had no way to heat their home. And so, it just, and it kind of brings me to the next part of this topic is that I get people that think I should make my channel like certain other people's channels. And this is nothing against anyone else who chooses to go this way with their channel. Because some people truly do just want to wake people up, but they make their channel all about news and the latest events. It's a twofold reason. One is that those are the videos that get the most views when you talk about the world's problems and the political environment and and all the horrible stuff that's happening. And I don't want to go that route. I don't mind touching on a few things to help people think about this is why we have gardens. This is why we have ways to heat and cook when there's no power. This is why we do a lot of the things that we do. I like talking about preparedness. But the thing is, preparedness doesn't have to be all about some major massive crisis that we're all being made to live in fear of. It doesn't have to be about that. It can be about the simple things that happen all the time, just like our recent power outage. Ugh, I don't even know what the common number is for how many we have each year, but we usually have several every year. It is common here. And so to me, not being prepared for these things is just silly, especially when you live in a place where this kind of stuff happens all the time. It wasn't some major political crisis. It wasn't war. It wasn't this. It wasn't that. All the things that everybody's talking about out there on these news type channels. It wasn't any of that. Or like the year we had that blizzard that closed off the roads on both sides of our town for I don't know how long. I think they were finally able to punch through on one side after a week, but the groceries in the store were getting pretty bare and people weren't ready. Nobody expected that blizzard to come because snow here it just doesn't happen every year. And when it does, it usually doesn't happen like that. That's not something we have to live in fear of. It's just a very realistic thing that can happen and has happened. And so the goal of my channel is to try to approach these kind of things from a more positive aspect because I don't think people need to hear about the doom and gloom and the fear mongering from every angle there is out there. So my channel is not and will not be about that. But I am going to present to you real life. Real life is you could lose your job. You could step outside wrong and break your leg and not be able to work for a little while. Or fall and crack your head and end up in the hospital. This is real life. It's not something you have to live in fear of. It's just living. It's just part of living. And I mean, there was a lady that used to follow me and, she has big garden and everything. And one year she stepped in a hole funny and broke her ankle and wasn't able to do much for gardening at all that whole season. These things happen. But you know what? She had plenty of food put up from garden years prior. So even if she couldn't get help with all this stuff, she was still covered. And that's the point. That's the point of being prepared. It shouldn't be about living in fear of what your government's going to do to you or what they're spraying in the sky or whatever it is that, we should always be scared of. It's about just preparing for real life events like people always did. It was the way people lived. It wasn't called preparedness, it was called living. You worked hard, you grew a garden, you canned the food that you grew, or you dehydrated it or put it up, and it could have been just hanging it to dry, like the leather breeches method with the green beans. You put up your food. And then you had that food to get you through the hard months. Not just the winter months, but the hard months. Somebody gets sick and now we have a doctor's bill. Now we don't have as much money to put towards buying the sugar and the flour we normally buy each month. Well, it's okay because we have extra sugar and flour stored up. It's real life, people. And that's if there's anyone out there that's just on the fence about, preparedness and whether or not they should bother. I think the problem is that so many people equate preparedness with buying into every single conspiracy theory there is out there, and they don't want to be on that side. So they need to be presented with just the real life scenarios that happen to people every single day. Because a lot of the scary, scary stuff you hear about does not happen to people every single day. It may not have happened to anyone at all so far. Doesn't mean it won't, but it also doesn't mean I'm going to start putting my focus on that in my channel. That's not what my channel's about. And again, I'm fine with people doing that. I'm fine with people that want to make their channel about that. And yes, sometimes I watch some of that stuff myself, but I don't steep myself in it. I want to keep my finger on the pulse of what's going on. That's all I need. I don't need to constantly be fed suffering and fear and all that stuff. It doesn't mean I'm afraid of it. It doesn't mean I'm afraid to talk about it. It doesn't mean I'm pussyfooting around. Like some people have just made the weirdest accusations about me and assume I know nothing and I'm completely ignorant. Believe me, there was a time about 12 years ago, no longer than that now. It's probably getting closer to 14 years ago, maybe even 15 years ago, where I was getting sucked into every single conspiracy. Well, maybe not every single one, but into quite a number of conspiracy theories. Thankfully, certain ones weren't a thing back then for me to get sucked into. And after about 2 years of that, I realized, or 18 months ish, I realized, wow, I'm constantly angry and in fear. This is not where I need to be. And so I learned to back off from that and focus on what really matters. And that is to hear, what I can do. Okay. Because there's things that you'll never be able to control, no matter how much you cry and scream and protest about it. So the more important thing is to do what you can, the things that you have control over, and not live your life in fear, because having a more self-sufficient / preparedness, old-fashioned-y kind of lifestyle is about having peace of mind that you've done what you can and you've done the best you can. The peace of mind of knowing that you've got enough green beans stored up from your garden in the form of pressure canned green beans to last you 3 years, or enough meat in your freezer, or whatever it is, enough of your medicinal herbs or culinary herbs dehydrated up to keep your flavor in your food and to keep you healthy. That's peace of mind. That's comfort. See, we don't have to live in fear when we have these things. And that's the focus I want my channel to be about. Okay. And I'm not putting down anyone else who chooses to go some of these other directions. That I have nothing against them. I just don't appreciate people that want to try to pressure me into making my channel about something it is not and never was meant to be. So there's nothing wrong with learning about some of that stuff, but always vet everything. Don't assume everything you believe just because the most trustworthy person or alternative news site told you it. Remember, those alternative news sites, they make money off your clicks too. So the more sensational they can be, the more money they're making. So just remember that, because I fell for a lot of stuff because I thought I could trust a certain person I was following back in the day that I stopped following. And I still do not follow. Did they have some things right? Yes, they did. But not all of it. Some of it was outright, well, I'm not going to say they were outright lying, but they took information and blew it out of proportion, and some of it was absolutely incorrect. And when I found that out, because I knew better, because it had to do with something I knew enough about to know it wasn't true, it was just more stuff to get clicks, to get money. It was all it was. And it wasn't true. That I realized, you just can't assume just because this person was right on this thing that they're right about everything they say. You got to be very, very careful. And for me, the wake-up call was realizing how I was constantly in this state of stress and fear and anger. And I'm like, no, this isn't how God wants me to live. This isn't how we're supposed to live. What does he tell us? We're not supposed to live in fear. We're supposed to trust him. Obviously, we're supposed to work. We're supposed to do the best we can. We need to be smart. We need to make the most. We need to be diligent. What's the word? There's another word I'm looking for. But, responsible with the things that he has given us. For some people, he's given us a little bit. We take that little bit, we make the most of it. Remember the 1 or 2 talents? We're supposed to make the most of it, not bury it in the ground. And for some people, he's given 10 talents. We're supposed to make the most of that too. So we are supposed to do something, but we're also supposed to trust and not live in fear. Good stewards. Exactly. We're supposed to be good stewards with what he has given us. And if you don't believe in God, then good stewards with what you have, what you've worked so hard for so far. And then continue to just live your life and not live in fear. So yeah, that was the secondary subject I really wanted to get to. And I've talked about it before, but to me, I feel like it's one of those things that sometimes just does not get said enough, especially when there's so many voices coming from all sides that are scaring us about this and that and what's going to happen here and what's going to happen there. And, oh, we can't get this or we can't do that. And it's just it's not going to be conducive to your health or your peace. It's not. And so it's better to just, again, touch on what needs to be touched on, learn what you feel affects you the most, and then find the best way that you can to help counteract that so that you can keep moving ahead in your own life and have that peace and comfort and security. So I'm going to go back up here. I got to see. Cindy says, Heidi, I love watching your channel because you are teaching me how to do the best for my family. I'm now wanting to make my own laundry detergent. I appreciate you sharing your knowledge. Thank you for that, Cindy. Thank you. And I know there's a lot of great comments in here I've probably been missing because I've just been ramble, like I do. Just ask Patrick. Now, sometimes I'm just quiet, believe it or not. There are times. And Mr. Rain can attest to this too. Sometimes I'm just quiet and he'll think there's something wrong with me. You okay? Yeah, I'm fine. I guess I don't have anything to talk about for a change. My mouth isn't moving. Sometimes I just don't like hearing the sound of my voice yet again because I'm editing videos all the time and I got to listen to the sound of my voice all the time. And sometimes I'm just like, man, I am so sick of listening to myself. And then there's times I just got to rest my poor, tired vocal cords. Mr. Rain needs to stop antagonizing Heidi and helping her use her skillet skills. Oh, you people are hilarious. I love you guys so much. This is so much fun. This is why when I start a live show, it's so hard to leave because you guys make me laugh. You also make me really realize, not that I don't read comments. Obviously, I read comments under the videos, and it's nice to know you're part of a bigger picture, but the real life interaction is just, it's like family. It's like extended family and people who understand where you're coming from. And they get your stupid humor, and they get why you do the things you do. And it's a beautiful thing. And it's great to be able to laugh together. I mean, how wonderful. I love to be able to laugh. I mean, we should be able to do that every day. Find something to find joy in. Joy and laughter. We need it. It's so good for our health and for our souls. Let's see. Um, did I have any other questions? Mike is Italian. I'm Irish, French, and German, but I have a hard time talking without using my hands. It's because you've been married to an Italian for so long. Yes, me and the hands going everywhere. I know I've smacked people a couple times on accident. I've smacked myself on accident too. I get so carried away. But hey, it's part of who I am. Let's see. I'm sorry. I'm just kind of skimming through some comments here, seeing if anything stands out. My eyes, boy, I tell you what, I really need to figure out something different for lighting, because having these LED ring lights so close, my eyes are starting to water. I don't know if you can see that. My eyes are starting to water simply from having those there. I think that one's probably an LED too. We might have to set up our halogen light again. That might be a better option if it's not too bright and piercing looking. We'll see. Anyway, sorry. Just skimming the chat. Be you always, Heidi. Thank you, Vicky. So, anyway. Yeah, I think that was mostly the things I wanted to cover. And I suppose I should probably get going, though I'm doing pretty good today. I shot 2 videos this morning. My this and that for Monday. Got it edited and uploaded and ready to publish already, both on YouTube and on Rumble, which is pretty good for me to have completely done before I start my live. And then got the second video I shot, I got started. See, you might try a good LED bounced off the ceiling. I'm wondering if maybe that's part of it too, because even though they've got the cover over them, how you have a ring light, you know what I'm talking about. I brought them in so close, or they're not gonna. It's funny because I can shoot my videos, but I think having the one on each side is it's just too much, and especially after sitting here for so long and then shooting the other 2 videos. So, yeah, we've got a halogen light that I used to use in the kitchen before I got the ring lights. Wasn't super crazy about the type of lighting, but it might be better on my eyes. It would make it a little brighter if I did that. But I do enjoy doing the live shows. And yes, Patrick will physically join us again at some point. That poor baby with the dents in his head from the skillets because he's whining about cookies. Every time I say something like I'm going to make a pie or I'm going to make cookies, oh, really? I've never had one of those. What does that taste like? Mr. Rain, and you wonder why you're always in trouble. Yeah. Indirect lighting is friendly to your eyes. Yeah, I'm kind of thinking I wonder if throwing like even because the problem in here is the ceiling is actually quite high. Since we designed this to be my dance studio, we actually have the ceiling kind of angled. So when I had teenagers and we're doing lifts, so like one person's lifting that person into a higher jump, they're not smacking their arms or their head against the ceiling. So we wanted a higher ceiling. What are you up to? He's sneaking in here, guys. What are you doing? He's sneaking around. I don't know if I trust him. I don't know what he's up to. It's kind of scary. He's giving me a weird look. No, Deborah, I mean, it's a good suggestion, the blue light glasses, but they don't work for me and they give me a headache. Oh, I guess maybe he wants